What's up, everyone? Konbini everyone. Sorry, I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure out why I couldn't see my chat box. I forgot to pin the tab. That's why. I was like, what am I missing? Oh, chat box. That might help. Adding that might, make it so I can stream. Oh, ohayo gozaimasu. Wait, what does gozaimasu mean? Let me Google it. Oh, it's politeness. Ohio Sigma Skibbity Riz. Thank you. Text to speech to text. Alright, so welcome back to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Last time we left off, the Earth got blown up. We're in a spaceship now, and the Vogons found us. And yeah, now we're like about to learn about Vogon poetry. And if you don't know what Vogon poetry is, good. Turn the stream off now. If you don't know, also turn the stream off now. Because it's bad. It's really bad. It's painful. Do you want pain and suffering? If so, keep watching. If not, hit the little red X in the corner of your screen. Okay. Let's get into it. Also, I hope you can hear me right, because I've been messing with my volume settings so I can record. Hello? There we go. All right. Vogon poetry is, of course, the third worst in the universe. The second worst is that of the Asgoths of Krea. During recitation by their poet master, Grunthos the Flatulent of his poem, Ode to a Small Lump of Green Putty I Found in My Armpit One Midsummer Morning, 4 of his audience died in the internal hemorrhaging, and the president of the Mid-Galactic Arts Nobbling Council survived by gnawing one of his own legs off. Grunthos is reported to have been disappointed by the poem's reception, and was about to embark on a reading of his 12-book epic entitled My Favorite Bath Time Gurgles, when his own major intestine, in a desperate attempt to save life and civilization, leaped straight up through his neck and throttled his brain. The very worst poetry of all perished along with its creator, Paula Nancy Millstone Jennings of Greenbridge, Essex, England, in the destruction of the planet Earth. Prostetnik Vogon Jeltz smiled very slowly. This was done not so much for an effect as because he was trying to remember the sequence of muscle movements. He had a terribly therapeutic yell at his prisoners and was now feeling quite relaxed and ready for a little callousness. The prisoners sat in poetry appreciation chairs, strapped in. Vogon suffered no illusions as to regard their works were generally held in. Their early attempts at composition had been part of a bludgeoning insistence that they be accepted as a properly evolved and cultured race. But now, the only thing that kept them going was sheer bloody-mindedness. Hold on, I'm like trying to like set a little stand for my book. There we go. I couldn't read. Oh, hold on. You can't like see me. There we go. Okay. Ugh. The sweat stood out cold on Ford Prefect's brow and slid round the electrodes strapped to his temples. These were attached to a battery of electronic equipment, imagery intensifiers, rhythmic modulators, alliterative residulators, and simile dumpers, all designed to heighten the experience of the poem and make sure not a single nuance of the poet's thought was lost. Arthur Dent sat and quivered. He had no idea what he was in for, but he knew that he hadn't liked anything that happened so far and didn't think things were likely to change. The Vogon began to read, a fetid little passage of his own devising. "Oh, Freddled Gruntbugly," he began. Spasms wrecked Ford's body. This was worse than he'd even been prepared for. "Thy microtations are to me as plurtal gabble-blotchets on an allerged bee." Went Ford Prefect, wrenching his head back as lumps of pain thumped through it. He could dimly see beside him Arthur lolling and rolling in his seat. He clenched his teeth. "Group, I implore thee," continued the merciless Vogon, "my funting, turling dromes." His voice was rising to a horrible pitch of impassioned stridency. And hooptuously drangle me with crinkly bindlewordles, or I will rend thee in the gobberwort with my blurgle crunchion. See if I don't. Cried Ford Prefect, and through one final spasm as the electronic enhancement of the last line caught him in full blast across the temples. He went limp. Arthur lulled. Now, Earthlings, whirred the Vogon. He didn't know that Ford Prefect was in fact from a small planet somewhere in the vicinity of Betelgeuse, and wouldn't have cared if he had. "I present you with a simple choice. Either die in the vacuum of space, or..." He paused for melodramatic effect. "Tell me how good you thought my poem was." He threw himself backward into a huge leathery bat-shaped seat and watched them. He did the smile again. Ford was rasping for breath. He rolled his dusty tongue around his parched mouth and moaned. Arthur said brightly, "Actually, I quite liked it." Ford turned and gaped. Here was an approach that had quite simply not occurred to him. The Vogon raised a surprised eyebrow that effectively obscured his nose and was therefore no bad thing. "Oh, good," he whirred in considerable astonishment. "Oh yes," said Arthur. "I thought that some of the metaphysical imagery was really particularly effective." Ford continued to stare at him, slowly organizing his thoughts around this totally new concept. Were they really going to be able to bareface their way out of this? "Yes, do continue," invited the Vogon. "Oh, and, interesting rhythmic devices, too," continued Arthur, "which seemed to counterpoint the, Now for more torture, exactly. Ford leaped to his rescue, hazarding, "The counterpoint, the surrealism of the underlying metaphor of the, He floundered too, but Arthur was ready again. "The humanity of the Vogonity," Ford hissed at him. "Ah, yes. The Vogonity, of the poet's compassionate soul." Arthur felt he was on a home stretch now. Which contrived through the medium of the verse, structure to sublimate this, transcend that, and come to terms with the fundamental dichotomies of the other. He was reaching a triumphant crescendo. And one is left with a profound and vivid insight into which suddenly gave out on him. Ford leaped in with the coup de grace. "Into whatever the poem was about," he yelled. Out of the corner of his mouth, "Well done, Arthur. That was very good. Finally used for my English degree? Yeah, you're probably understanding more than I am." The Vogon perused them. For a moment, his embittered racial soul had been touched. But he thought, no, too little, too late. Oh my god, sorry, hold on. There's like a freaking gnat in my house. Fuck off. Hope you're doing well today. Yeah, we're just vibing. We're reading, vibing. I'm getting harassed by a gnat. I don't know where it went. I hope I didn't swallow it. That'd be gross. The Vogon perused them. For a moment, his embittered racial soul had been touched. But he thought no, too little too late. His voice took on the quality of a cat snagging brushed nylon. "So, what you're saying is that I write poetry because underneath my mean, callous, heartless exterior, I really just want to be loved, he said. He paused. Is that right? Ford laughed a nervous laugh. Well, I mean, yes, he said. Don't we all deep down, you know... Of sarcasm, it would be caught dead with an English degree. I don't know. Some people have weird degrees. Some people decide to waste their arts on liberal arts degrees, but the more you know. The Vogon stood up. No. Well, you're completely wrong, he said. I just write poetry to throw my mean, callous, heartless exterior into sharp relief. I'm going to throw you off the ship anyway. Guard! Take the prisoners to number 3 airlock and throw them out. What? Shouted Ford. A huge young Vogon guard stepped forward and yanked them out of their straps with his huge blubbery arms. You can't throw us into space, yelled Ford. We're trying to write a book. Resistance is useless, shouted the Vogon guard back at him. It was the first phrase he'd learned when he joined the Vogon guard corps. The captain watched with detached amusement and then turned away. Arthur stared round him wildly. I don't want to die now, he yelled. I've still got a headache. I don't want to go to heaven with a headache. I'd be all cross and I wouldn't enjoy it. The guard grasped them both firmly round the neck, and bowing defiantly towards his captain's back, bowing deferentially towards his captain's back, hoisted them both while protesting out of the bridge. A steel door closed, and the captain was on his own again. He hummed quietly and mused to himself, lightly fingering his notebook of verses. He said, counterpoint to the surrealism of the underlying metaphor. He considered this for a moment, and then closed the book with a grim smile. Death's too good for them, he said. The long steel-lined corridor echoed to the feeble struggles of the two humanoids clamped firmly under rubbery Vogon armpits. What a sentence! This is great, spluttered Arthur. This is really terrific. Let go of me, you brute. The Vogon guard dragged them on. Don't you worry, said Ford. I'll think of something. He didn't sound hopeful. Resistance is useless, bellowed the guard. Just don't... Oh wait, sorry, wrong character. Don't say things like that, stammered Ford. How can anyone maintain a positive mental attitude if you're saying things like that? My God, complained Arthur. You're talking about a positive mental attitude and you haven't even had your planet demolished today. I woke up this morning and thought I'd have a nice relaxed day, do a bit of reading, brush the dog, and now it's just after 4 in the afternoon. I'm already being thrown out of an alien spaceship 6 light years from the smoking remains of the Earth. He spluttered and gurgled as the Vogon tightened his grip. Alright, said Ford. Just stop panicking. Who said anything about panicking? Snapped Arthur. This is still just a culture shock. You wait till I've settled down into the situation and found my bearings. Then I'll stop panicking. Arthur, you're getting hysterical. Shut up. Ford tried desperately to think, but was interrupted by the guard shouting again. Resistance is useless. And you can shut up as well, snapped Ford. Resistance is useless. Oh, give it a rest, said Ford. He twisted his head till he was looking straight up into his captor's face. A thought struck him. Do you really enjoy this sort of thing? He asked suddenly. The Vogon stopped dead, and a look of immense stupidity seeped slowly over his face. Enjoy? What do you mean? What I mean, said Ford, is if I give you a full, satisfying life, stomping around, shouting, pushing people out of spaceships. The Vogon stared up at the low ceiling, and his eyebrows almost rolled over each other. His mouth slacked. Finally, he said, well, the hours are good. They have to be, agreed Ford. Arthur twisted his head round to look at Ford. Ford, what are you doing? He asked in an amazed whisper. Oh, trying to take an interest in the world around me, okay, he said. So the hours are pretty good, then, he resumed. The Vogon stared down at him as sluggish thoughts moiled around the murky depths. Yeah, he said. But now you come to mention it, most of the actual minutes are pretty lousy. Except... He thought again, which required looking at the ceiling. Except some of the shouting I quite like. He filled his lungs and bellowed. Resistance is... Sure, yes, interrupted Ford hurriedly. You're good at that, I can tell. But if it's mostly lousy, he said, slowly giving the words time to reach their mark, then why do you do it? What is it? The girls? The leather? The machismo? Or do you just find that coming to terms with the mindless tedium of it all presents an interesting challenge? Arthur looked backward and forward between them in bafflement. Said the guard. I don't know. I think I just sort of do it, really. My aunt said that the spaceship guard was a good career for a young Vogon. You know, the uniform, the low-slung stun right holster, the mindless tedium. There you are, Arthur, said Ford with the air of someone reaching the conclusion of his argument. You think you've got problems. Arthur rather thought he had. Apart from the unpleasant business with his home planet, the Vogon guard had half-throttled him already, and he didn't like the sound of being thrown into space very much. Try and understand his problem, insisted Ford. Here he is, poor lad. His entire life's work is stamping around, throwing people off spaceships, and shouting. And shouting, sure, said Ford, patting the blubbery arm clamped round his neck in friendly condescension. And he doesn't even know why he's doing it. Arthur agreed this was very sad. He did this with a small, feeble gesture, because he was too asphyxiated to speak. Deep rumblings of bemusement came from the guard. Well, now that you put it like that, I suppose. Good lad, encouraged Ford. But all right, went on the rumblings. So what's the alternative? Well, said Ford, brightly but slowly. Stop doing it, of course. Tell them, he went on. You're not gonna do it anymore. He felt he ought to add something to that, but for the moment, the guard seemed to have his mind occupied pondering that much. Said the guard. Well, that doesn't sound that great to me. Ford suddenly felt the moment slipping away. Now, wait a moment, he said. That's just a start, you see. There's more to it than that, you see. But at that moment, the guard renewed his grip and continued his original purpose of lugging his prisoners to the airlock. He was obviously quite touched. No, I think if it's all the same to you, he said, I'd better get you both shoved into this airlock, then go and get on with some other bits of shouting I've got to do. It wasn't all the same to Ford Prefect at all. Come on now, but look, he said. Let's slowly let... Who the fuck? I would love to know who was talking. Hold on. Said Arthur without any clear inflection. Yeah, Arthur's just suffocating this entire time. That's so fun. But hang on, pursued Ford. There's music and art and things to tell you about. Resistance is useless, bellowed the guard, and then added, you see, if I keep it up, I can eventually get promoted to senior shouting officer, and there aren't usually many vacancies for non-shouting and non-pushing people about officers, so I think I'd better stick to what I know. They'd now reached the airlock, a large, circular steel hatchway of massive strength and weight, let into the inner skin of the craft. The guard operated a control, and the hatchway swung open smoothly. "But thanks for taking an interest," said the Vogon guard. "Bye now." He flung Ford and Arthur through the hatchway into the small chamber within. Arthur lay panting for breath. Ford scrambled round and flung his shoulder uselessly against the reclosing hatchway. Shouting? What do you mean shouting? Huh? I said shouting. The senior shouting officer. Oh, yeah, the text-to-speech isn't always right. But listen, he shouted to the guard. There's a whole world you don't know anything about. Here, how about this? Desperately, he grabbed the only bit of culture he knew offhand. He hummed the first bar of Beethoven's Fifth. Da 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 da. Doesn't that stir anything in you? No, said the guard. Not really, but I'll mention it to my aunt. If he said anything further after that, it was lost. Oh. Oh. The hatchway sealed itself tight, and all sound was lost except for the faint, distant hum of the ship's engines. They were in a brightly polished cylindrical chamber about 6 feet in diameter and 10 feet long. Ford looked around it, panting. Potentially bright lad, I thought, he said, and slumped against the curved wall. Arthur was still lying in the curve of the floor where he had fallen. He didn't look up, he just lay panting. We're trapped now, aren't we? Yes, said Ford. We're trapped. Well, didn't you think of anything? I thought you were going to think of something. Perhaps you thought of something and I didn't notice. Oh, instead of shit. Yeah. Oh, yes, I thought of something, panted Ford. Arthur looked up expectantly. But unfortunately, continued Ford, it rather involved being on the other side of this airtight hatchway. He kicked the hatch they'd just been thrown through. But it was a good idea, was it? Oh yes, very neat. What was it? Well, I hadn't worked out the details yet. Not much point now, is there? So, what happens next? Asked Arthur. Oh, well, the hatchway in front of us will open automatically in a few moments, and we'll shoot out into deep space, I expect, and asphyxiate. If you take a lungful of air with you, you can last for up to 30 seconds, of course, said Ford. He stuck his hands behind his back, raised his eyebrows, and started to hum an old Beetlejuicean battle hymn. To Arthur's eyes, he suddenly looked very alien. So this is it, said Arthur. We're going to die. Yes, said Ford. Except, no, wait a minute. He suddenly lunged across the chamber at something behind Arthur's line of vision. What's this switch? He cried. What? Where? Cried Arthur, twisting around. Now, I was only fooling, said Ford. We're going to die after all. He slumped against the wall and carried on the tune from where he left off. You know, said Arthur, it's at times like this, when I'm trapped in a Vogon airlock with a man from Beetlejuice, about to die of asphyxiation in deep space, that I really wish I'd listened to what my mother told me when I was young. Why, what did she tell you? I don't know. I didn't listen. Oh. Ford carried on humming. This is terrific, Arthur thought to himself. Nelson's column has gone, McDonald's has gone, and all that's left is me in the woods, mostly harmless. Any second now, all that will be left is mostly harmless. And yesterday, the planet the planet seemed to be going so well. A motor whirred. A slight hiss built into a deafening roar of rushing air as the outer hatchway opened to an empty blackness studded with tiny, impossibly bright points of light. Ford and Arthur popped into outer space like corks from a toy gun. Hold on, I need water. That's crazy. What did she tell you? I don't know, I didn't listen. Me too. Who listens to their parents? Not I. Okay. Ooh. Did you hear that? That was my neck. Alright. Chapter 8. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a wholly remarkable book. It has been compiled and recompiled many times over many years and under many different editorships. It contains contributions from countless numbers of travelers and researchers. The introductions begin like this. Still didn't work out. That's crazy. Space, it says, is big. Really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. I mean, you may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space. Listen. And so on. After a while, the style settles down a bit, and it begins to tell you the things you really need to know. Like the fact that the fabulously beautiful planet Backseating is now so worried about the cumulative erosion by 10 billion visiting tourists a year that any net imbalance between the amount you eat and the amount you excrete while on the planet is surgically removed from your body weight when you leave. So every time you go to the laboratory there, it is vitally important to get a receipt. To be fair though, when confronted by the sheer enormity of the distances between the stars, better minds than the ones responsible for the guide's introductions have faltered. Some invite you to consider for a moment a peanut in reading and a small walnut in Johannesburg, and other such dizzying concepts. The simple truth is that interstellar distances will not fit with the human imagination. Even light, which travels so fast that it takes most races thousands of years to realize that it travels at all, takes time to journey between the stars. It takes 8 minutes to journey from the star Sol to the place where Earth used to be, and 4 years more to arrive at the Sol's near a stellar neighbor, Alpha Proxima. For light to reach the other side of the galaxy, for it to reach Damogran, for instance, takes rather longer, 500,000 years. The record for hitchhiking this distance is just under 5 years, but you don't get to see much on the way. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy says that if you hold a lungful of air, you can survive in the total vacuum of space for about 30 seconds. However, it does go on to say that what with space being the mind-boggling size it is, the chances of getting picked up by another ship within those 30 seconds are 2 to the power of 276,709 to 1 against. By a totally staggering coincidence, that is also the telephone number of an Islington flat where Arthur once went to a very good party, met a very nice girl whom he totally failed to get off with, and she went off with a gatecrasher. Though the planet Earth, the Islington flat, and the telephone have all now been demolished, it is comforting to reflect they are all in some small way commemorated by the fact that 29 seconds later, Ford and Arthur were rescued. Imagine having that good of luck. Like, get a lottery ticket at that point. Do you think they have space lottery? Like, how much, like, space lottery, but like the winning pot is like hypership? Imagining. My mouth is like blah, 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 blah from all the random words I've been saying. Half these words don't even make sense. Alright. Chapter 9. A computer chattered to itself in alarm as it noticed an airlock open and close itself for no apparent reason. This was because reason was in fact out to lunch. A hole that had just appeared in the galaxy. It was exactly a nothingth of a second long, a nothingth of an inch wide, and quite a lot of millions of light years from end to end. As it closed up, lots of paper hats and party balloons fell out of it and drifted off through the universe. A team of 7 3-foot-high market analysts fell out of it and died, partly because of asphyxiation, partly of surprise. 239,000 lightly fried eggs fell out of it too, materializing in a large wobbly heap on the famine-struck land of Pogril in the Panzel system. The whole Pogril tribe had died out from famine except for one last man who died of cholesterol poisoning some weeks later. The nothingth of a second for which the whole existed reverberated backwards and forward through time in a most improbable fashion. Somewhere in that deeply remote past, it seriously traumatized a small random group of atoms drifting through the empty sterility of space and made them cling together in the most extraordinarily unlike patterns. These patterns quickly learned to copy themselves. This was part of what was so extraordinary about the patterns, and went on to cause massive trouble on every planet they drifted onto. That was how life began in the universe. 5 wild event maelstroms swirled in vicious storms of unreason and spewed up on a pavement. On the pavement lay Ford Prefect and Arthur Dent, gulping like half-spent fish. "There you are," gasped Ford, scrabbling for a fingerhold in the pavement as it raced through the third reach of the unknown. "I told you I'd think of something." "Oh, sure," said Arthur. "Sure." "Bright idea of mine," said Ford, "to find his passing spaceship and get rescued by it." The real universe arched sickeningly away beneath them. Various pretend ones flitted silently by, like mountain goats. Primal light exploded, splattering space-time as with goblets of jello. Time blossomed, matter shrank away. The highest prime number coalesced quietly in a corner and hid itself away forever. "Oh, come off it," said Arthur. "The chances against it were astronomical." "Don't knock it. It worked," said Ford. "What sort of ship are we in?" asked Arthur as the pit of eternity yawned beneath them. "I don't know," said Ford. "I haven't opened my eyes yet." "No, nor have I." The universe jumped, froze, quivered, and splayed out in several unexpected directions. Arthur and Ford opened their eyes and looked about in considerable surprise. "Good God," said Arthur. "He looks just like the seafront at Southend." "Hell, I'm relieved to hear you say that," said Ford. "Why?" "Because I thought you might be going mad." "Perhaps you are. Perhaps you only thought I said it." Ford thought about this. "Well, did you say it or didn't you?" he asked. "I think so," said Arthur. "Well, perhaps we're both going mad." "Yes," said Arthur. "We'd be mad, and all things considered, to think this was Southend." "Well, do you think this is Southend?" "Oh, yes. So do I. Therefore, we must be mad. Nice day for it." "Yes," said a passing maniac. Who was that?" asked Arthur. "Who, the man with the 5 heads and the elderberry bush full of kippers?" "Yes." "I don't know, just someone." "Ah." They both sat on the pavement and watched with a certain unease as huge children bounced heavily along the sand and wild horses thundered through the sky, taking fresh supplies of reinforced railings to the uncertain areas. "You know," said Arthur, with a slight cough, "if this is Southend, there's something very odd about it." "You mean the way the sea stays steady as a rock and the buildings keep washing up and down?" said Ford. "Yeah, I thought that was odd too. In fact," he continued with as a huge bang, "Southend split itself into 6 equal segments, which danced and spun giddily around each other in lewd and licentious formations. There is something altogether very strange going on." Wild yowling noises of pipes and strings steered through the wind. Hot donuts popped off out the road, for 10 pence each. Horrid fish stormed out of the sky, and Arthur and Ford decided to make a run for it. They plunged through heavy walls of sound, mountains of archaic thought, valleys of mood music, bad shoe sessions, and footling bats, and suddenly heard a girl's voice. It sounded quite a sensible voice, but it just said, 2 to the power of 100,000 to 1 against and falling. And that was all. Ford skidded down a beam of light and spun around, trying to find a source for the voice, but could see nothing and he could seriously believe in. "What was that voice?" shouted Arthur. "I don't know," yelled Ford. "I don't know. It sounded like a measurement of probability." "Probability? What do you mean?" "Probability, you know, like 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 5 to 4 against. It said 2 to the power of 100,000 to 1 against. That's pretty improbable, you know." A 1,000,000-gallon vat of custard upended itself over one of them without warning. "But what does it mean?" cried Arthur. "What, the custard?" "No, the measurement of improbability." "I don't know. I don't know at all. I think we're on some kind of spaceship." "I can only assume," said Arthur, "that this is not the first-class compartment." Bulges appeared in the fabric of space-time. Great, ugly bulges. Arthur felt his body softening and bending in unusual directions. South End seems to be melting away. The stars are swirling. A dust bowl. My legs are drifting off to the sunset, and my left arm's come off too. A frightening thought struck him. "Hell," he said. "How am I going to operate my digital watch now?" He wound his eyes desperately around in Ford's direction. "Ford," he said, "you're turning into a penguin. Stop it." This book is so fucking weird. "Stop turning into a penguin right now, or else I'm gonna be very mad at you." Again came the voice. 2 to the power of 75,000 to 1 against and falling. Ford waddled around his pawns in a furious circle. "Hey, who are you?" he quacked. "Where are you? What's going on there? Is there any way of stopping it?" "Please relax," said the voice pleasantly, like a stewardess in an airliner with only 1 wing and 2 engines, one of which is on fire. "You are perfectly safe." "But that's not the point," raged Ford. "The point is I am now a perfectly safe penguin, and my colleague here is rapidly running out of limbs." "It's all right. I've got them back now," said Arthur. 2 to the power of 50,000 to 1 against and falling," said the voice. "Admittedly," said Arthur, "they're longer than I usually like them, but—" "Isn't there anything," squawked Ford in avian fury, "you feel you ought to be telling us?" The voice cleared its throat. A giant petite four lolloped off in the distance. "Welcome," the voice said, "to the starship Heart of Gold." The voice continued. "Please do not be alarmed," it said, "by anything you see here or around you. You are bound to feel some initial ill effects as you have been rescued from certain death at an improbability level of 2 to the power of 276,000 to 1 against, possibly much higher. We are now cruising at a level of 2 to the power of 25,000 to 1 against and falling, and we will be restoring normality just as soon as we are sure what is normal anyways. Thank you. 2 to the power of 20,000 to 1 against and falling." The voice cut out. Ford and Arthur were in a small, luminous pink cubicle. Ford was wildly excited. "Arthur," he said, "this is fantastic. We've been picked up by a ship powered by the infinite improbability drive. This is incredible. I heard rumors about it before. They were all officially denied, but they must have done it. They built the improbability drive. Arthur, Arthur, what's happening?" Arthur had jammed himself against the door to the cubicle, trying to hold it closed, but it was ill-fitting. Tiny, furry little hands were squeezing themselves through the cracks. Their fingers were ink-stained. Tiny voices chattered insanely. Arthur looked up. "Ford," he said, "there's an infinite number of monkeys outside who want to talk to us about the script for Hamlet they've worked on." Alright. Chapter 10. The infinite improbability drive is a wonderful new method of crossing vast interstellar distances in a mere nothing of a second, without all that tedious mucking about in hyperspace. It was discovered by a lucky chance and then developed into a governable form of propulsion by the Galactic Government Research Team on Damagram. This, briefly, is the story of its discovery. The principle of generating small amounts of finite improbability by simply hooking the logic circuits of the Bambleweenie 57 sub-Mason brain to an atomic vector plotted suspender and a strong Brownian motion producer, say a nice hot cup of tea, were of course well understood. And such generators were often used to break the ice at parties by making all the molecules in the hostess's undergarments leap simultaneously 1 foot to the left, in accordance with the theory of indeterminacy. Many respectable physicists said they weren't going to stand for this, partly because it was a debasement of science, but mostly because they didn't get invited to those sorts of parties. Another thing they couldn't stand was the perpetual failure they encountered in trying to construct a machine which could generate the infinite improbability field needed to flip a spaceship across the mind-paralyzingly distances between the farthest stars, and in the end they grumpily announced that such a machine was virtually impossible. Then, one day, a student who had been left to sweep up the lab after a particularly unsuccessful party found himself reasoning this way. If, he thought to himself, such a machine is a virtual improbability, then it must logically be a finite improbability. So all I have to do in order to make one is to work out exactly how improbable it is, feed that figure into the finite improbability generator, give it a fresh cup of really hot tea, and turn it on. It startled him even more. No, he did this, and was rather startled to discover that he had managed to create the long sought after golden infinite improbability generator out of thin air. It startled him even more that when just after he was awarded the Galactic Institute's prize for extreme cleverness, he got lynched by a rampaging mob of respectable physicists who had finally realized that the one thing that they really couldn't stand was a smartass. Wow. What a way to end off. What a... Wow. That's crazy. What an interesting end to today's chapters. What a... Wow. Wow, that's... Huh. How many more chapters do we have to go? Hold on. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how many more chapters there are. We are at chapter 10. Oh, 34. Oh, we're like a third through. That's nice. That's pretty good. We just finished chapter 10. There's like 34 chapters in A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's crazy. Dang. Anyways, my mouth hurts. Those were a lot of really weird words. And also I bit my tongue. So my mouth really hurts. But that's fine. We ball. Yeah. I don't have anything to say. I'm gonna get a schedule out soon. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe today. Depends on what else I have to do. I think I'm gonna go eat some beef jerky. Ouch, yeah. It's like on the corner of my tongue too. So when I say like a word with like a or like a I bite it again and it hurts. But yeah, I think I'm gonna eat some beef jerky. See you later. Bye. Otsulora. What flavor? Regular. I don't like the teriyaki flavor. I just like the regular flavor. There's something about it. Anyways, good night, everyone. Otsurorum. I don't know what I'm gonna stream this week. Yeah. Okay, bye-bye.